Hello everyone, this is Nathan from Snap and welcome to another of our Snap XMP webinars. Today we're going to be focusing on Snap XMP Online and we'll be looking at designing your questionnaires and forms directly within the Build tab of Snap Online without the need for our desktop software. This is the first of three Snap XMP Online webinars. Today is all about the initial design, the boring bit if you like, as it involves typing up your questionnaire. In the second part, we'll be looking to refine the survey, making this questionnaire more dynamic and interactive in terms of content, using routing and masking to guide your respondents through the answering process. And then the final part will be looking at the analysis available to you. Part 2 will be in June, and then part 3 in July. A few key benefits to creating your questionnaires directly in our online software. The big advantage is that you can do it anywhere on any device. So you're not dependent on having your work PC or work laptop with you or having anything installed. If you're traveling across country, wondering how to fill your time, you can get started with your survey projects. And then when you get back to the office, either continue doing everything online, or alternatively, if you have got access to our desktop software, then you can continue in that. As a starting point for your questionnaire, we have a number of templates available to you, from simple blank ones, multilingual templates, through to pre-designed surveys that can be edited to make them your own. Despite it being a simple to use online solution, you still have the full powerful validation and skip logic options available to you, ensuring your questionnaires and forms are straightforward to complete, whilst also ensuring that your data received back is clean and ready to analyse. And as mentioned, if you have got Snap XMP Desktop as well, you can jump between the two with everything automatically being synchronized as you build up your project. You also have instant access to real-time analysis through our standard summary reports, as well as the ability to create your own tables and charts. Okay, let's head into the software to make a start. I'll begin by logging in via the snapsurveys.com website, and we're going to be logging into the UK server today, and I'm just using one of my sort of demo accounts today. I've already created a couple of folders, but we're going to be making use of the webinars folder today. And before we go ahead and sort of design our own survey today, I'm just going to do a quick preview of the survey that we're going to be creating. So I've got a sort of a preview demo here. So I'll go into the Collect tab, and down the bottom we have the Launch Preview button. So it is just a preview, so I do get this warning just advising me that the data is not going to be saved. So as we just work our way through the survey, you can see it starts off with a bit of an introduction. We have a date question, simple single choice questions, some semantic scales, couple of other sort of single choice questions, and as we sort of move on to next month's webinar, we'll be looking at how we can sort of randomize this list while still keeping things like none of these at the bottom. We've got some more dynamic style questions, drag and drop style questions, questions allowing us to choose the three most important factors. So again, making use of our drag and drop style questions. You can see when I try and choose another one, it doesn't let me. I can change the order of ones and I can put them back and obviously choose a different one instead. We have a range of importance versus satisfaction style questions, and these have been lined up using compound grid, so they're all on the same line. So it's nice and quick and easy to decide how important is it to us, and then how satisfied are we with it. We have the carousel questions. These are really useful, particularly if you've got quite long statements and you're asking people sort of to agree or disagree. These work really well on mobile phones, on your sort of smaller screens. Got just an open-ended question. We've got some quantity response questions. And again, this is sort of leading on to the sort of next webinar, but you can see I can type words in there. Equally, I can type numbers in there, and it's doing some calculations as well. So we're actually doing sort of some quite clever stuff within this survey. Got a little bit of routing here. So are we going to answer any demographic questions? If we do, we do. And we're making use of something called inline questions, where rather than having a sort of a please specify underneath, we've got the sort of follow-on question appearing side by side. got some patterns in here which we'll look at, some email addresses. So if I was to look at my video, if I was to remove the .com, you can see it tells me it's not a valid address. But again, much of this we'll be looking at in next month's webinar when we're looking at validation. And then finally, we have a question which allows you to upload a file. So that could be a PDF or maybe a Word document, Excel document, or picture. Okay, so nothing too exciting, but hopefully you agree that it is a fairly sort of dynamic looking survey. There's a mixture of different types of questions in there. But if we close that one down, if I head back into the webinars folder, we're going to start to create our own survey. So I will click on the new survey. And our starting point for a new survey is a template. Now we provide you with a number of Snap templates. There's some blank ones. There's also some more advanced ones down here, which we'll look at in just a moment. But you've also got the ability to create your own templates. The idea being that it would pull in your company logos, maybe bringing in your sort of branding, your fonts, colours, etc., as well as perhaps some sort of predefined questions or other content, such as maybe sort of privacy statements, etc. So yeah, you can certainly create your own templates, or you can make use of the ones that we provide. So we have two blank ones, which includes a language one. So I've got one which includes Welsh here, and depending on where you are in the world, depends on which kind of language templates you will have provided. So when you log in, you may well have 2 or 3 different language ones available to you. And as their name suggests, they are blank. They're fairly sort of straightforward. Not a lot sort of going on in terms of content provided. Or we've got a number of more advanced templates down the bottom, which come with some predefined questions. And I'm going to very quickly just show you some of these ones before we go and create our own sort of survey from scratch. So I'm going to start off with the customer satisfaction survey, and it's just a case of choosing your template and clicking next, giving your survey a name and clicking create survey. It gives you a little bit of introduction, just basically telling you just how to use this, but ultimately you delete that section. And then you can see there's some predefined questions here, which include sort of map control, so sort of 0 to 10 smiley faces, but also some sort of standard tick box questions. But the idea is that you can sort of tailor this to your own needs. So you can edit text, you can change the layout, you can delete questions completely, you can add your own questions. So yes, use this as a starting point, but tailor it to your own needs, obviously adding in things like your company logo, etc. I'll just save that one. I'm just going to quickly show you one further one. Again, going back to my webinars folder. And this time I'm going to choose one of the health related ones, so the FFT friends and family test one. And you notice that some of our surveys, as well as sort of providing a couple of sort of sample questions in there, they've also got sections in there where you can insert information which is a bit more relevant to you. So organisational information, which obviously only you would know what to put in there. Okay, but again, these are really just your starting point. The idea is that you can build on these to make them your own. But we're going to go back and create our own survey from scratch. As I said, this time we're going to start just with the blank template. So if I give my survey a name, now, as I said, this is the blank template. So as the name suggests, it is fairly blank. We've got a placeholder for your first title, and close that window down, you can see what it is. But we've also got the different question styles available to you on the left hand side. Now I'm going to go ahead and just make use of that placeholder for my title. I'm actually going to pop my company logo in there. Just going to go and browse off to the folder I've got. And I'm going to take that down to 50% in terms of the sizing. And do be sure to make use of the alt text. This is sort of hover text, which is an important accessibility option. So for anyone that's using a text reader, it will be reading out this to let them know kind of what's on the page. Okay, now obviously today we've got a survey to type up. I'm not the quickest at typing. I'm also prone to quite a few typos, so I'm going to do a little bit of cheating today, and I've got a PDF which I'm going to do some copying and pasting from today. So initially we're going to start off with some kind of introduction. So if I just copy that text, and on the left hand side we've got the different types of questions, and down the bottom we've got our title, subtitles and instructions. So I'm going to start off with a subtitle and just paste that in. Now, because I am copying this from a PDF, PDFs are sometimes a little bit strange how they sort of deal with spaces and things. So sometimes you do need to just add your spaces back in. And I'm just going to reduce the font size of that. Bring that down to size 12. There's my subtitle all fixed. If I now go back to my PDF, our first proper question is going to be a date question. And again, on the left hand side, we've got some different questions, including date. Paste that one in. I should point out, if you did just want to know what today's date is, then there's actually no need to ask that question, because in the background of every survey, Snap is collecting information such as today's date, the time that the survey took place, etc., etc. We have a simple tick box question where people can choose one option. So the question styles on the left, by the way, are broken down into sort of question types. So you can see we've got a multi-choice question in the multi-choice section, which will allow for people to choose more than one option. I'm only wanting them to choose one option, so it's in here, and we've got single choice. And we're going to have 4 different choices, 4 different answers. So just add some names in there. Not going to worry too much about formatting today, but we got the option to sort of move things across the page. We can go into choices. I can add additional options, I can delete options, and I can also put them in different orders. Moving down to question 3, we have what's known as a semantic scale question, and this is quite an interesting type of question because we're not asking, well, we're not really telling people what these tick boxes mean. We're just saying where between enthusiastic and disinterested do we fall? So where along that line do you see us? So this is called a semantic scale. Now, in terms of adding your questions, I've been double clicking to add them in. You can alternatively just drag them down and drop them wherever you like. So I'm going to have 7 different options, and I'll just stick with two rows of data today, but you can obviously add additional rows in if you wish. Just try and speed things up a little bit. Great. I'm not going to worry too much about question 4 because again that would just be another single response question. Again, in the follow-up webinar to today, we'll be looking at how we can sort of put these in randomized orders, but at the same time keeping things like none of these always at the bottom. So I'm actually going to miss out question 4 and go straight to question 5. Now, at the moment, obviously, then we're looking at a piece of paper PDF. So this is just a simple grid question where we're asking people to rate things 1 to 5. But the whole idea is to try and make your online surveys as dynamic and engaging as you can. So we're going to set this up as one of our drag and drop options. You can see you've got drag rank and drag categorize. So we're going to go with categorize. We set in. We have 3 options today. Just paste those in. You can Yeah, it's really important to try and keep your surveys or keep your respondents as interested as possible and as engaged as possible. So hopefully they actually press submit at the end. In terms of answers, we've got 1 to 5. So I'm going to go into my choices. I'm just going to add them in one at a time. Leave it as 1 to 5. I'm not going to worry about they're not applicable today, but what we do just need to do is get rid of the original option that was in there, which we're no longer using. So delete that one. Okay, moving on to question 6. Similar type of question, but this time we're asking people to put these in order of their sort of first, second and third most important factors to them. So again, we're going to do this as dynamically as we can using a drag and drop option. So this time drag rank. Just fix the formatting a little bit. It's come from the PDF. So again, we have maybe 4 options for this one. So the idea is you can have as many options as you want down the left-hand side, but it will only let them choose 3 of those options. Okay. And again, for my choices, I said there's 3 choices, so into choices 1, 2 and 3. And as before, removing the one which was there, which we're not going to use anymore. Okay. So you can see it's nice and easy to sort of build up your survey, and we're using sort of a range of different question styles. Now for question 7, in fact 7 and 8, they're sort of related questions. We're asking how important something is to them and then how satisfied are they with them. So because they're related and we're asking the same sort of course content twice, we're actually going to display these side by side. So it's going to be 2 grid questions, but we're going to set it to be sort of displayed side by side. Now I'm going to start off with a bit of a sort of a header. So down the bottom, we've got our titles, subtitles and instructions. So I will add an instruction. And then for the actual questions, they are going to be 2 grid questions. I've got importance. And we've got just 1 to 5 again. So 5 choices. I'm just sort of tabbing on my keyboard to move around the place. Just have 3 options. Okay, so that's my first question. Now, this follow-on question is basically the same, just with a different sort of main question. So I'm actually just going to clone the first one, to be honest. So I go into more. We've got copy. And then we can just paste it wherever we want it. So I'm going to paste it below that current question. Obviously, what I now need to do is change my text. So it's going to be the satisfaction. Okay, now at the moment they are just 2 completely separate grids sat one underneath each other. So as I said, I want these to display side by side. So I'm going to choose the second one and we're going to compound it with the grid above. So basically attach it to the grid above. Okay. Now it doesn't look like it's done that in here, but when we preview it in a moment, you will see it has. Just realised I obviously didn't copy the right text. So just bear with me a second. Better. Okay, now for question 9, we've got a series of statements and they're quite long statements. So we could again just leave it like this as a grid question. What we probably need to just remember is that people will be filling out your surveys on mobile phones, which obviously have much smaller screens. So the default setting for a grid question is to display as a drop-down menu, which will sort of help with the smaller size screen. But again, with these big long statements, even a drop-down menu isn't going to work that well on a mobile phone. So we have a style of question called a categorize. So in fact, a carousel cell. If I type in my data question, so we've got strongly agree to strongly disagree to strongly agree. Again, this is another example where it will look like a standard grid question in this window, but when it's previewed and when it's an actual live survey, obviously it will look like a carousel. Okay, I'll just take some of my answers or sub questions, and as I said, this works particularly well where we've got these longer sort of statements that we're dealing with. In fact, I'm going to get rid of that last one. Okay, we've got a general comment question. So again, we've broken looking at the different sort of response types. So we're in the sort of the text input one, so we've got open-ended. And with it being a general comment question, we're probably expecting a fair bit of data coming back. So maybe make the box a bit bigger, perhaps from a formatting point of view, make it a bit sort of thinner, might look a bit nicer, sort of thing. Question 11, again, we'll skip that one over. That's just another single choice question. Question 12, we're looking for a numerical response there, sort of a quantity answer. So, but it's still a sort of a text input question, so it's just open-ended. This time might make the box, in fact, the response, rather than being an open-ended response, just any kind of words. Got various options in here. Again, we'll be looking at these more in the next webinar that we run in June. But yeah, we're going to set it to a quantity and I'll just make the box smaller. And similar sort of thing for question 13, but this time we've got a series of boxes as opposed to just the one box on its own. So there's one called open series. Again, we're hoping for a numerical quantity response. Quantity. And we've got classes this term. And classes last term. Again, we can change the size of the box. I think I probably only changed one of them by looks at the quantity, so yeah, just change that one to quantity as well. Okay. Okay, on to the final page, we've got, in my example, I've got sort of a new sort of subject header, so I'm going to add that in as an instruction. And just from a formatting point of view, I'm going to make that nice and big. And we've also got options, sort of bold, italic, underline, and color. So I'm going to go in now. My company logo, I don't know if you spotted it, but it had orange on there. I could try and grab a orange which is similar, but you ideally want to make it as a perfect match. So if we come here, we can then put in your hex number. So my hex number, or my company hex number, is this one. That's a complete match with my actual company colours. We've got a couple of just single response questions. So I'm going to skip out questions 14 and 15, and that would just be another instruction, probably, or subtitle, depending on your preference. So I'm going to go straight down to question 16, which is going to be a single response question again, or single choice. Well, 6 different options. Now, quite often when you've got sort of a fairly long list, you quite often have a sort of a please specify underneath, or if other please specify. So we're going to initially set this up to add an other question to it. So under more and other, I just put my text in there. But what we're actually going to do is, rather than people having to tick I describe myself as in another way and then having to move down the page to answer that question, so effectively having to sort of manually skip all over the place, we're going to set it up so it actually appears side by side. So going back to my paper survey, obviously you can see it's kind of doing it here, but this bit will disappear when it's viewed online, and it will appear there instead. So first of all, we want that text to look like it belongs there, as opposed to at the moment it's a bit too big. And at the end of the initial tick box, we are going to insert a variable field, so a bit like a tag. And so that's question 12, that's question 12A. 12A, and we're going to add it as an inline question. So as I said, the please add here will disappear when it's actually viewed as an online survey. And what we'd also do is set up some routing in the next webinar to say it's only when they tick that that the please add here appears. Okay. Questions 17 and 18, again, we're going to skip over those today, but they would just be open-ended questions, but we would put some validation on those in the next webinar to make sure that they actually give valid postcodes and zip codes and email addresses. So moving down to the very last question, where today we're asking them to upload a photo, but as I said, it could be a PDF, could be a Word file, could be anything you like, really. So this is an attach it style question. I'll just fix the formatting a little bit. Okay, so they will click on the upload button and instead just upload something from their PC or laptop or phone. And then just to finish off, you've got some kind of thank you message. Remember, it does take you to a default thank you message once you actually press the submit button, but it's always good to say it in the survey as well. So I'm going to add that in as a subtitle. So there's my questionnaire typed up. Obviously, we haven't really focused too much on the sort of look of this survey, it's more just inputting the questions. But if we go, if I've saved it with the tick, if we go to the collect tab, we need to publish the current survey. Potentially we could start the survey to make it live, and this will be the actual link which gets sent out to people. What we might want to do is make that link slightly more user friendly, and we can add our own wording. So we've got the link which will be live once we press start. We've got a QR code which you can send off to people or put on posters, but for the time being today we're just going to launch a preview. Again, it is just a preview. And there's our survey all designed. Not going to worry too much about going through, but at the moment it's one big long survey without any page breaks. So what we might want to do is go in and maybe pop a page break or two in there. If I close that preview down, back to the build tab. So down the side, we've got page breaks, and we can just drag them across and again drop them. wherever you wish to drop them. We can obviously make any other edits you want to. We can sort of drag questions around and drop them where you want. We can also just need to remember that we've been designing this as a sort of an online survey focusing on like a PC or a laptop, but in the background of this survey there is a tablet version available, there's a phone version available, and also a paper version available. And it's just worth bearing in mind things like you might put a handful of page breaks on the PC version. For your phone version, you might choose different places to put those page breaks, because ultimately a mobile phone is where you're looking to people just tend to scroll down a lot more on mobile phones. So yeah, they're going to look potentially a little bit different. But going back to your paper version, you may well have, we've got a statement at the beginning telling them to click next to begin. Clearly on a piece of paper, you're not going to be telling them to click next. So what I'm actually going to do is copy that introduction, just paste it just above. I'm going to remove the line about clicking next. So I've got two different introductions, one which says click next, one which doesn't say click next. And I'm still in my paper survey. I could hide the one which says click next. So I can either manually hide it individually, but it's probably easier to click on more and manage the visibility. So this is the one which says click next. I don't want that to be available on the paper survey, but I do want it to be available on all their online versions. And then we'll do the opposite for the one which doesn't say click next. So that one is going to be hidden in all of the online versions. Okay, so we've made some changes. Again, we will save. Move back into the Collect tab, and you can see it's giving us a little bit of a warning that the survey we published earlier is now kind of out of date, so we need to now publish the latest version. And then we could preview it again. Again, you can see we've got page breaks in there now, but yeah, I'm not going to worry too much about going through that. Okay, so hopefully that's given you a little introduction in terms of how to create your questionnaires and forms directly in Snap XMP Online, allowing you to quickly design your surveys without the need for any installed desktop software. As mentioned, this was the first of 3 webinars relating to our online software. In June, we'll be looking at how to make the surveys more dynamic and interactive in terms of content. So talked about the sort of date questions and things, and putting calculations in here and patterns on your postcodes and email address type questions. And we're going to be using routing and masking to sort of guide your respondents through the answering process, just to make it as easy as possible for them. On screen now, there are a few QR codes. The one on the left will take you to our Snap XMP Online interactive tutorial. So pretty much going through what I've been doing today, but gives you a chance to actually interact and do it yourself. In the middle, the QR code will take you to our main Snap XMP Online page on our support hub, where you'll find lots of short videos, how-to tutorials, and other documentation to help you along the way. And then if you have got a spare 2 minutes, if you wouldn't mind completing our short survey, that's the QR code on the right. Thank you for joining me, and we'll hopefully see you again soon.